Join us as we spotlight a number one contender for the Kentucky Derby of 2023, Forte. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Trust the Profits, joined by El Hombre for this special series where we are going to just focus on one horse, and each horse will get its own video. So look forward to that. If you haven't been following along, this is where you come to find out who the contenders are in the 2023 Run for the Roses in the first Saturday of May. This video is spotlighting Forte. El Hombre, how are you?
Hey, man, we're living the dream. We're getting close to Derby time, and we are spotlighting Forte, as you said, who is, I don't know, I guess the consensus number one on most people's list. If not, he's damn close on everybody's list. And what we're going to do is take a deep dive into his full history here. I just shared the slide here that has his full history, starting all the way back in May of 2022, where he won his first race at Belmont Park. Coming in, he got his one loss was his second race. Overall, he's had 7 races, 6 wins, 1 loss. That one loss was in July of last year, the Sanford Stakes. Colin, do you have any info on what happened in that race?
Yeah, so that was up at Saratoga, going 6 furlongs, most strike. Maybe that's going to be a trivia question, trivia answer, if Forte can just continue to run the table of who was the horse that finally or did beat Forte. In that race, you had a really good field, though. Andiamo Firenze was in that field, Curly Jack, all horses that we've kind of seen come along the Derby trail. Look, it was his second start out, and it was Saratoga, going 6 furlongs. I think we've seen that he kind of, although he's sired by violence, the distance, he's kind of gotten better as it's gotten longer, and you can give a horse a pass their second time out, especially up at Saratoga, right? The graveyard for favorites.
Yeah, and it was that was a race, like you said, there was some legit contenders in there. They were 2-year-olds and very young, and a lot of things have changed since that race. Forte moved on to the hopeful and won that easily, and then came the Breeders' Futurity at Keeneland.
You got to be careful when you lead me into a horse that Forte beat that day, because this could very quickly become a Loggins video. And for those of you that have followed the Trust the Profits, you know how high I was on this horse named Loggins, and he's on the inside there. Forte's on the outside. Loggins had put up 22.46 half, very, very fast, but he fought back here. This was the first really gut check for Forte, who was able to get his nose down on the line over Loggins. And I think we realized after that race that you might have had something special here. I thought we had something more special with Loggins after going 22.46 and being able to hold on and even fight back there in the stretch. But that's when you kind of had to put Forte on your radar as a 2-year-old as they headed towards the Breeders' Cup Juvenile race, which was coming up after that in Keeneland.
Yeah, you see, he did get it done at the Breeders' Cup Juvenile against Cave Rock, who was the heavy favorite there. And again, you had a great duel. Forte has showed grit. He showed the ability to step it up and win a close race. A lot of times that's something that some horses just don't have in them and others do. Forte has proven time and time again that a stretch duel is something that he's definitely not afraid of, with Loggins and Cave Rock, which are 2 of the bigger competitors he's had to face. And again, later at the Florida Derby. But before we touch on that, he won the Fountain of Youth Stakes at Gulfstream Park in March. That was actually his, and as you see down the right side of this slide here, the Equibase figures on the climb. I mean, all the way up until the Fountain of Youth, where he hit his peak Equibase figure. And then he ran it back at the Florida Derby in a race that I thought was his least impressive race so far. I don't know where you were at on that, but the Florida Derby, he did win, but it was a big struggle against another big competitor who he'll face again in the Kentucky Derby, which is Mage. But I don't know. What do you see the trajectory here? Do you think Forte is a legit number one contender? Do you think it's questionable? I think it's super balanced, so it's hard to say.
Yeah, it's interesting when he went in, the Fountain of Youth, he was kind of the last horse who were waiting to come off the layoff, because all the other ones we had seen in the previous preps. So we were waiting to see, okay, how's Forte going to come back? as a 3-year-old, and he was very impressive in that Fountain of Youth, really put away that field. As you said, his speed figures were on the rise. Then you go to the Florida Derby, the speed figure took a little bit drop. If you go by Brisnet, he did get 100 though, so it's not like it dropped that far off.
No.
As you looked at that stretch run, here he is on the outside. Right here, he just looked like he wasn't as interested, and it looked for sure that Mage, who was his 3rd-time starter here, was going to take this race. But look at that little spurt right there by Forte, and suddenly at this point you knew, wow, he just kind of took that race away. I snatched it from the jaws from the victory of defeat, as they say, catching up on Mage. But I think for those that want to play against Forte, that race gave them enough ammunition to say, I think that this horse possibly could be beaten, possibly could be vulnerable. And as we said, the speed figures descended a little bit out of that Florida Derby. But you have to look at this horse. If you could bring back up his history there, he's had 4 Grade 1 victories. That's really impressive going into the Kentucky Derby. I did a little bit of looking back over the past couple. Remember, Tiz the Law had 4 Grade 1 victories going into the Derby. However, remember, Tiz the Law was the year of COVID, so the Grade 1s were all mixed up. So technically he won the Grade 1 Travers before he actually ran in the Kentucky Derby. Forte has this feeling to me, like an Epicenter, like an Essential Quality, like a Tiz the Law, kind of the horse that's really coming into the Derby that had the big victories, but you sort of had those question marks. And I don't think we got that question mark until we saw what happened there in the Florida Derby when a horse like Mage, 3rd time, almost put him away. But 5 consecutive graded stakes wins. We'll dive into the pedigree a little bit. He's got Violence on top, which suggests speed over stamina. But the dam, Queen Caroline, actually won 5 stakes at a mile or longer, and she was sired by Blame, who I always remember as the beating my Zenyatta here behind me. That's what Blame is so famous for. And that was
the most famous races ever. Yeah.
Yeah. He's beat Mage twice. He's beat Rocket Can once. If you're looking at other horses that are in the Derby, as far as who he's kind of taken care of. So only those 2, of course, having beaten Mage twice. I think you can really go either way. You can really feel, kind of comfortable from what you've seen. He's reeled off the wins, but you could look at that stretch run in the Florida Derby and maybe say, hey, maybe I can find an opportunity elsewhere. Remember, he kind of comes from off the pace a little bit. He's usually fairly close. Pace is going to be a huge thing in the Kentucky Derby, is if he's going to have enough. If someone kind of gets out on an easy lead, is he going to have enough there? If he kind of runs the way he did in that stretch run of the Florida Derby, I don't know that he gets there in the Kentucky Derby, because I think the horses on the front are not going to have a blistering pace like they did last year, and I think that might be detrimental to Forte. What about you? Do you think he's kind of top for you?
I can't argue with you if you think he's top, but I will say this. I think I'm a 50-50 split for the reasons you kind of outlined already, but to say that he is not, I will say this. And you said it already. He looked very disinterested in the Florida Derby until it was he almost blew the race, in my opinion. Mage blew by at the point that I thought that Forte should have started launching at the same time, or, Mage went first. Mage went, I don't know, I'm going to say 100 yards earlier than Forte. And Mage blew by Forte, and I looked over. Me and Matt are standing right at the wire. I said, Forte is done. I thought he was done. And this is a little bit before this clip here, but Mage blew by him, and I said he's done. So that's the downside. I thought he was done, looked disinterested. The upside is this closing kick here that you're about to see in this video. I mean, he made up, 20 yards in 0 time. I mean, he has a gear. I just wonder if he could use that gear in a 20-horse field if he doesn't get a good trip, like you said. I don't think I'm going to bet Forte. I love Forte. I'm rooting for him because it's great to see a juvenile champion from the Breeders' Cup basically sweep the whole year. He's going to become a legend if he can do it. It's been a while. It's not very often that you get a juvenile champion that goes all the way to the Derby and gets it done. He's very capable. I don't think I can bet him as the favorite, but I get it. I mean, it's a tough one.
Yeah, and you kind of started to lean into that too, is if he's 5-2, You know, as we've talked about this field, you know, Forte was kind of always the top. I think in the last couple of prep races, we saw some horses that actually maybe are a lot closer than we thought. So you could be, you know, when you start talking about value, if you're getting a horse 6-1, 7-1, 8-1, the Practical Move, Dermasoto Gake, Tap It Trice, as you mentioned, you know, that may end up what it becoming. And when you think Forte might win, but you're going to take a shot on one of those horses that are value. You talked about him being disinterested and kind of needing to ride. I actually think that's somewhat of a theme across this field, right? I mean, Tap It Trice, he needs to be woken up both to get out of the gate, and then you saw his stretch run, which we'll get to when we talk about Tap It Trice, but it's not necessarily like that's not a little bit of a trend that's happening across this 3-year-old crop.
But somebody's going to get out in front and not have to maneuver through 18 horses. It's, you know, that's a big advantage. So
yeah,
with that,
one last thing I'll add.
One of respect for Forte. Go ahead though. Sorry.
Yeah, but one last thing I'll add though is if you watch the Forte races, he is continually quite wide coming around that turn. So when you look at like Practical Move races, he's had easy trips on the rail. At least with the extra distance, you know, if Forte swung out 5, 6, 7 wide, he's shown the ability that won't be a problem for him.
Yeah, I just worry he's going to get too far back. That's all. If he can avoid that and stay stalking up close without a blistering pace where he tries to overcome it like Epicenter last year, he could win for sure.
Well, he's got all-class jockey Irad Ortiz aboard, so if there's someone that you want, it's probably going to be him.
All right, that's it for Forte. He definitely got a shot. He's 99% sure going to be the favorite going off. We'll see what happens. Thanks for joining, everybody. Please subscribe, like the video, do all that good stuff. Thanks again. Peace.